Okay, I think we are live. Hey everyone, thank you all for joining us. We are just waiting for the live streams to start. As soon as Imani indicates that it is live, we will be starting with the webinar today. And today we are talking to Ronak and Naveen. So I'm just going to everyone have your seat, see other attendees. We have a lot of interesting people who have come in, and thank you so much again for joining us. Himani, we are live. All right, cool. So, hi everyone. I'm Aditya Shirasagar. I'll be your host for today evening. And today evening, we are talking about how intent-based advertising or outreach can help a brand with their app distribution. And the end goal of all of it is how you can get user acquisition and retention, which leads to a healthy LTV. Now, today I have with me is Ronak, who is the VP of Ad Products and Monetization at Indosovers, and Naveen, who is the VP and GM at InMobi of Growth Marketing Platform. So both of these companies are uniquely placed in the Indian atmosphere, and both of them bring in experience or what the Indian consumer basically needs. And over here, Indus is playing the role of a app ad publisher, and InMobi is the growth marketing platform that is relevant, and both of them work together for acquiring users. And this is something that we're going to be talking about, and what are the key metrics is that any growth marketer needs to be aware of. So with that, I think I will just start with Ronak and Naveen and give them the क्या बोलते हैं, talking this thing कि which is the one metric that both of you are as growth marketeers that you think is the most important. Let's start with the at the deep end of the topic, and which is your favorite metric to track? Ronak, Naveen, whoever wants to.
Hi, Aditya. Yeah, so I will go first, Aditya. So I think the the favorite metric and I think the most important metric is also for a marketer would be LTV, which is the lifetime value. And a lifetime value is essentially a measure of the revenue your business will make from any given customer, right? So it's an estimate of the average gross revenue that a customer will generate before they churn. So I think why this is the most important metric is because it gives you a lot of insights into the success of a business or success of a product or success of a marketing campaign. This metric will help you make important business decisions around sales, marketing, product development, and support. And I think as monetization folks also call it, they call it ARPU. So I think yeah, I think it's the most important metric. Also, it's a famous saying, right? You may lose 80% of your users who download your app, but still 80% of the business can come from those 20% who remain, right? So it's also always important to focus on how much value you are able to generate from the user you are able to retain, and that is why it becomes the most important metric for me as well as
All right,
I
all
think
right.
you
So
know marketers.
Ronak is not holding back any punches, Naveen. He took the LTV, took the better one. So what are you going to do with over here?
Yeah, I mean, there are right after LTV. First of all, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I think it's great to have so many people listening in on growth marketing. Always good to connect with enthusiasts, right? So now that LTV is taken, the other metric obviously is CAC, right? Customer acquisition cost. Once a growth marketer knows that this is the likely LTV that you're, say, you are likely to get 100 rupees out of your users, LTV of a user, then automatically you are working out your funnels to understand what is the optimum customer acquisition cost that you can pay to acquire a customer, right? If you're making only 100 rupees from a user, there is no way in the world that you should be paying 200 rupees to acquire that user, right? So you should know exactly what is a viable customer acquisition cost for you to make and hold your growth marketing channels accountable to. Your campaign should be extremely linked to that. You should actually be looking at that metric like a hawk because LTV can change as growth marketers. CAC is the metric that you are typically held accountable to. LTV is something which could move by product levers, by discounting, by couponing, etc. A bunch of things which can drive up and down LTV. But as growth marketers, you are mostly held accountable to CAC, and you need to make sure that that number. I'm sure all the CEOs want CAC numbers to keep going down on a continuous basis, and that's why platforms like Indus and Inmobi are always under pressure either to deliver to. So I think these are the two metrics that go hand in hand as far as growth marketing is concerned.
All right, so both of them are not holding back. So I'm guess neither should you all. We have mentioned all of the questions that we thought would be relevant towards the conversation that we are having today. Himani has posted all of them on your right hand side. So if you look at your right, if you just look over there, there's a questions tab, and there are some of the questions that we put out there that we feel will be more relevant to the conversation. But we need you to vote so that we know which questions to take first. So some of the questions are: what are the key milestones in the user journey that helps LTV? What are the metrics to consider with a generalized versus intent based approach, which I'm going to take up next anyway? And what are the differences between all of this? So just check out the questions and do vote for the ones that you want to be answered first, or put in the questions over there, because this conversation is going to be a conversation. So we are hoping that a lot of audience interaction does come in. So all right, so we've talked about the two key metrics, but let's start from the start. And let's start with what is app distribution, what is growth marketing, and KPIs, which is key performance indicators. What are the KPIs that every growth marketer should know? So either one. Ronak, Naveen,
I
here.
think you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll tell you why app distribution is important, right? Like it's very easy to make an app and publish it. There are millions and millions of apps that exist out there, be it on the Google Play Store, Apple App Store, or the Indus App Bazaar, right? App distribution as a concept is very important because it's not important for a developer to just invest resources into building an app. It's important to reach out to the users and make sure that the app that you're building is actually consumed by users, right? So any app that is built has a notion of growth marketing, growth hacking, customer acquisition, social media marketing, digital marketing, whatever you call it. It's all ways of actually getting app distribution to make sure that your app is in the hands of more users. It's being used, it's being experienced, and of course there is a feedback loop coming in to say, is the app actually working? Are people deriving value in it, and all of it, right? So that is fundamentally the concept of app distribution, because just being on the Play Store doesn't give you users. Play
Yep.
Store is a marketplace filled with all kinds of apps, right? Search by WhatsApp status, you will possibly find like 100 apps just to give you like search WhatsApp status, download WhatsApp statuses, and so on. But that's not enough. You have to make sure that you're doing App Store optimization. You have to make sure that you're doing your Play Store keywords optimization. You have to do UAC. You have to work with affiliate channels, social media channels, all of that. So that is the crux of app distribution. In terms of growth marketing, I think I covered a bunch of things. Growth marketing earlier used to be simple: run Google, Facebook, get your apps in front of users and get the scale. But today the world has become far more complex. Google and Facebook itself have their own restrictions in terms of support, ways in which things happen, and then of course there are more channels which are more flexible and open to working with smaller and smaller app developers and at large scale. So that is why growth marketing is important, because it encompasses not just Google, Facebook, but bunch of everything put together across SMS, email, paid marketing, earned marketing, affiliate channels, social channels, app store optimization, push notification, OEM distribution, all of it. KPIs, I think, fairly simple ones in terms of what every growth marketer should know. I think there is a key metric called a conversion rate, which is to say that of all users who you actually targeted, how many of them actually ended up downloading and opening the app, right? There is no point in just targeting 1 million users if they're not relevant to your user base. Work
Yep.
with partners, work with sources who are actually able to identify the right target user base for you and get them converted for you into engaged users. I think beyond that, once an app has been acquired, we've spoken about LTV CAC. Engagement rate is one sign to actually measure how things work. So at the simplest level, your conversion rate and hence automatically linked to what is called a cost per install or a CAC are typically the key metrics that any growth marketer is typically looking at on a daily basis.
All right. So that those are the KPIs. CAT. That is something that you need to look at. And lots of, the world has indeed changed, and now the conversation is going on about not just Google Play Store, but how to basically use other methods that we have. So I think, Ronak, you can come in and talk about how Indus can thus play a part in growth marketeers journey.
Sure, sure, Aditya. I think Naveen has talked about what is app distribution and why is it, how is growth marketing important and getting more and more important in today's age. But I will maybe try to give a slightly different angle, right? So, with app distribution, I think all apps are created to be distributed, right? There's no app unless it's a side project which is looming around in some folder.
Hmm.
Rest all apps are meant to be distributed, right? You create an app which is around content or service, and you want users to use that. So that is essentially app distribution. It's like enabling users to download your application and consume content or use services, whatever is the primary purpose of the application which you have created,
Hmm.
right? So that is a fundamental meaning of app distribution. Now, when I come to growth marketing, I think growth marketing itself has evolved over the last couple of decades, right? So when previously it used to be very traditional marketing models uh, where the marketing campaigns were created around different channels like TV or it's ATL, BTL or digital marketing. But now it has now we see in growth marketing, which is like marketing 2.0, we see that it's traditional marketing model, but with different layers added to it, and those layers are layers of A/B testing or blog posts, research, data-driven marketing campaigns, SEO optimization, more of understanding, user analytics, right? And all of this basically understanding of data and understanding of the user is then fed into that model to reap results and to achieve robust and sustainable growth, right? So that is basically growth marketing, and this is how it's different from traditional marketing, where it just it's for traditional marketing, which was basically just looking at the top of the funnel and acquiring users. So successful marketing is no longer just the top of the funnel. It's and acquiring users. It's about acquiring users who are going to stick with you, who's going to stick around. So I think that is what growth marketing has as a concept brought in the way we look at marketing and in the way we conduct marketing campaigns.
Hmm.
And it's more of a process rather than a one-time activity, right? It's not just you start a marketing campaign and just and you set up a goal, which is like acquiring 1 million users, and then you just leave it. It's more of a process where you learn every day. How are the metrics looking like? How is the CTRs looking like? How is the conversion looking like? And then you take those learnings back with you and feed it into a model which will basically be more optimized and will give you better results. Right. So this is the growth marketing, which is more of a product-based approach and not just a marketing-based approach, because now marketeers are also responsible for driving a lot of different product metrics, right? So, for example, activation, retention, etc. All marketeers also have a very important part in managing those metrics and driving those metrics for a particular product. With respect to different funnel points, I think activation, retention, acquisition, referral, revenue, etc. All are these different funnel points which a growth marketer should look at. And basically, a growth marketer needs to derive learning from all those different funnel points. And all these learnings will then get translated into different strategies, which can be a sales strategy or can be a product strategy. And then this is how basically a marketer should collaborate with different team members and different stakeholders within the organization and drive value for the product as well as for the user. Right. So I think so that is growth marketing as such. And when it comes to distribution, there are various channels for distribution. Previously, it was majorly digital marketing was thought of as Facebook or Google AdWords, etc. Right? So you just start an AdWords campaign, put in some keywords, and put in some budget, and then you start. Right? So I think that was what traditionally was to be, but recently with a lot of new OEMs coming in, so most OEMs now have a strategy, have their own app stores, have their own discovery platforms, app discovery platforms. So they are also engaging and working with advertisers to achieve their brand goals. So I think the landscape has only improved and diversified. Now we have OEMs, we have OEM stores, we have a lot of ad networks, growth marketing platforms like InMobi, etc., where you can, as an advertiser or marketer, you can come in and basically start running your campaign. So I think that entire ecosystem of app distribution has just diversified, and there are so many options, and it's very important for a marketer to understand what options will fit their brand goals and what is the right acquisition strategy for the user.
Understood. So,
And
sorry, go on.
yeah, I think go ahead.
No, no, no. So basically, I just wanted to set the context over here again for the people who are just joining us. Is when you're a growth marketer, normally what you'll end up doing is like Naveen said, you'll end up optimizing for the store. You'll do the ASO, title, description. You'll do your keyword understanding, and the same way you do SEO, you will end up doing your ASO, and that will give you the organic traffic and the organic first beta users. You'll create that ambassadors, and the first level of your community. That is how generally, organic push will come from marketeers or at the start of it. And then, the traditional approach would be that, like both of them mentioned, is, you buy Google AdWords and, you understand that, Array, with these keywords, my audience is going to come to me. So maybe I should be using these applications. Like, for example, with NFN Labs, where I do end up working a lot of apps that, we have water. So I know that, drink water in summer. So that is a keyword I need to target. Or another one is learn with breadcrumbs. So I know people who are looking for an iPad app. So I'm running them on Facebook and on Google. But the main difference is this is a very generalized approach that most of these marketeers will end up taking, and end up tracking the wrong metric, which is the reach or impressions, and create that as a benchmark, which generally in marketing terms is known as a vanity metric. That the reach does matter, of course it matters, but also what matters is what both of the gentlemen have mentioned today, which is how does your conversion look like. And I mean, the next question would have been the same thing, but I think our friend from Pavel Naya, our friend from Counterpoint Research, is asking us ki what is the biggest customer retention challenge in India. I mean, this is going a bit off topic, and we'll come back to the topic of generalized approach versus intent based approach. But do you think you wanna, like? Is there some insights you wanna give to this question as to what is the biggest customer retention challenge that you, as a marketeer, that you would say that this is the biggest retention challenge? Any insights on that right now, or should we park the question for later with more category details? Ronak?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I think So see, I think retention can be measured into different metrics, right? So the first touch point of a retention is basically a user installing an app and uninstalling it because the user couldn't find any value from that product or a service, right? So that is the first point of retention where we see that since there is so much competition, there's so gone are the days when there used to be one app for a service, or there will be one e-commerce app. Now there's so much competition around in every category. There are 10 e-commerce apps. There are so many food delivery apps, right? So it's very important for a service, for a product to actually deliver the right value for the user, and that is, I think, the biggest retention challenge for the marketer, that around 60 to 70% of the users end up uninstalling the application, right? Also, when I talk about the device real estate, right? So every device will have a limited real estate. Your device can only cater to 30 to 40 different applications, or maybe 50, right? You will not end up installing 200 applications and use them on a regular basis. Also, when it comes to time span of the user, right? So if a user is spending 30 to 40 minutes on the device every day, so it's very important that you are able to capture the time share of the user. So I think that is the biggest challenge, which is the product challenge as well as the marketing challenge. And how do you ensure that the users you are acquiring, you are able to drive that value for that user, and ensuring that they retain with you and don't churn out. I think that is the first touch point. I think after that, through the course of the product usage, there are other metrics also which come into picture, like stickiness, right? So stickiness is basically ratio of DAO versus MAU. So maintaining that healthy stickiness ratio where you are ensuring that if a user is coming once in a month, he is also coming on a regular basis. So basically creating those triggers within your product or within your marketing campaign, which can be internal or external, is very important so that the user is coming back regularly on the product and you are able to retain it. So that is basically the loyalty which you create for a user. So I think there are two different challenges which I see. One is more of a value challenge, which acquiring users which actually see that value, and because of the high competition, this is happening. And other is more of a retention based challenge, where are you able to create those enough triggers for the user to come back on the product.
Okay. I think before we get to Naveen, I think in the last webinar as well, we spoke about how culture plays a part in retention, as to culture and the language. When a person is coming in, the intent does matter. And I think if Himani can be very kind enough to just share the link in the chat over there, so that we have covered these some of these points around retention and intent, and what part does culture play in it. But I think what if I were to summarize what Ronak just said to us is that One, retention is a product level challenge. Second is it, providing that uniqueness that has the top of the mind brand recall, if I'm right. Is that what you're pointing at? No?
Yeah, correct.
And the third one that you said is that does it have a healthy DAO and a mouth? And as cute as it sounds, DAO and a mouth doesn't refer to two, twin cats, but it does refer to like daily active users and monthly active users. When I first heard it, I thought those were the cutest metrics that they existed in the planet Earth. And I still do actually. But with this, I'll take this same question from um, Pavel to you, this Naveen. What is the biggest customer retention challenge that you have observed in India versus the rest of the world?
Sure, Aditya. I think see the answer to this question, like 5 years back, would have been very different from what it is today, right? Like I think 5 to 6 years back, people in India were very conscious of the space on their phones. They were really downloading limited number of apps, like high size of apps, etc. And then they were deleting it and so on, right? The world has completely changed on its head in the last 2 years or so. Today, people are all the more for new experience. A lot of users who are coming online are first-time internet users through their smartphones. So they're actually very keen to give any app a shot, right? They are very happy to look at a new app that comes up and they will immediately download it and they will like give it a spin, right? That is guaranteed. If they see an ad, remote interest to them, they'll download it because it's not a space on phone. Real estate is not an issue anymore, right? At least that is being removed in most cases. Largely because data is also affordable, phones have also become far more modern in that sense. I think the challenge today is most growth marketers today, they've become smart enough to say that they're moving away from the couponing and sale-led world to actually try and offer value to the users and then get them hooked onto the app. Right? If it was couponing led, then the challenge comes in with retention to say that what happens when a user finishes using that coupon? Are they really going to come back to that app for the consistent use, right? So I think that is a retention challenge to say that for specific intent-based apps, you could take like travel, where people may book users by trying to get them back onto your app every day, or would you instead just make sure that you're at the top of their mind when they look for booking a vacation, they come look for it on your app? The by trying to drive by trying to do a lot of notifications just to get people back onto your app, you may actually end up forcing them to uninstall the app. Instead, you just have to be smart enough to know that you're offering great value. You've got them on for the right reason. You've not brought them onto the app for a discount or for an offer. You got them on by promising value, you delivered it to them, and you surface to them when they need it. You know when to engage with them at the right time rather than forcibly including in their life and making sure you make their life a mess in that sense. And I think that is the retention challenge that growth marketers are today learning to live with, to say that you don't have to necessarily chase an app open every day, right? A user may open your app only once a month, but they will be your highest LTV user. Be comfortable with that. Understand user cohorts to that extent and tailor your communication in that
I
sense.
mean, I think that's more or less something that, would cover the. I wish I could summarize everything that you just said, Naveen, but I think there's a bit of a connection issue over there. But if I were to summarize this, what you're saying is retention is category based and it has to be approached not in a generalized manner, but you need to have, you know, manners in which you know your audience and you know how to, engage with them. Am I more correct over there? I mean, know your audience, know what they're planning to do in
Yes.
life, and align your notifications and expectations that way.
Yes, you're correct. Apologies for the connection issue. Murthy always kicks in.
Digital India,
Uh,
bro. It's okay.
it's not my-
Okay. So go on. Okay.
yeah, I was saying, I think you summarized it well, Aditya. You to say that understand your audience better and be in front of them when they need you, instead of trying to be in front of them at all the time. If you intrude on their life too much, they are likely to consider you a pain and a nuisance rather than a value.
I wish I could take some names and say some certain things, but I'm gonna refrain. But you can, check out my Twitter. I do a lot of hot shots over there. But let's get back to this thing. So this brings me to the next question. Pavel, does that answer your question, or do you need any more insights? Because I feel that the question would be much more direct with, like, if you have any categories that you want to particularly address. Because, like I said, when I first saw the mixed panel retention cohort, I felt like I was looking at a DNA test. But then I realized that it was thinning because people were just leaving. But then I realized that what I have to do. But that was on a very general this thing. If you have category specific questions, do add on to it in the questions, or just drop in a message over here. So that brings me to the next part of this thing, which is what is a generalized approach and what is an intent based approach. Like, what can you, like, where do you guys want to start with that? Because more or less now we have moved into the territory of a healthy LTV, and growth is equal to retention. That is, I think, that goes without saying. If you can retain, you can get growth, and that would lead to a healthy LTV, which is a lifetime value from each and every user, or as our telecom friends like Ronak said, they call ARPU. So user acquisition cost we have identified the metric, which is LTV. We have identified conversion rate and how all of this correlates to your business goals. So guys, what is the difference? Why is everyone here? What is the difference between generalized approach and what is the difference between intent based approach? I mean, again,
Aditya, I will take this
okay.
if you allow me.
Yeah, Ronak, go
So I
ahead.
think, yeah, by generalized approach, you mean that it's marketing without use of data and segmentation, right? So it's a I think you mean it's spray or pray marketing, right? Which marketers call it, where you just put in budgets and without any data insights or without any targeting, you just run a campaign. So I
Hmm.
think yeah, if that is what you mean, then I think that is something which these days most advertisers wouldn't want to do. It's very rare to say that there's a generalized marketing approach. But I see there are certain scenarios where this can happen, right? So while there are certain sufficient marketing dollars to spare, but every marketer is also driving product goals for their company. So they need to be very wary of the kind of users they are acquiring and the LTV of the users to justify the CAC or the customer acquisition cost. Right. So only I think couple of scenarios where this can happen is maybe so we have worked with a lot of small startups, right, which are just trying to get their product out in the market, acquire the initial set of users, achieve critical mass. So I think a small startup which is looking to gain traction wants to acquire those initial set of users to be able to create certain user personas and understand how user interacting with their product would go with a more generalized approach, where they would want to acquire as many different types of users they can, and then understand which personas interact the best with their product and which is the persona for which they are able to drive the most value for, right? So I think that is one category of advertisers who would go for a generalized approach. Another category would be a product or service which appeals to the masses, right? For example, there is shopping, e-commerce, or there are communication platforms, or there are social media platforms, right? So in e-commerce, everybody shops. The only difference is that more shop offline and lesser of the people shop online these days. But I think that behavior is also changing pretty fast as we speak. But but a user who shops offline is still a prospective user for a brand, for an e-commerce brand. Why? Because you can quickly change the behavior of the user or change habits of the user and drive that user to an online platform. So a user can be easily incentivized to shop online through awareness or through great service or through discounts, coupons, as Naveen mentioned, and it can be converted into an online user. So I think this is one scenario where a marketer may approach a more generalized user acquisition approach. And similarly with communication and social platform, for example, WhatsApp, when they started, I heard that they work with almost every OEM and telcos just to get their app out on every device, right? And since the product turned out to be amazing, everybody is now using WhatsApp. So they approached the philosophy that we acquire everyone, and since they had that trust and faith in their product that everybody will use it and that product will drive value to everyday lives of the users, it will be used. Right? Similarly for Facebook, initial growth hacking was through auth mechanism, auth integration with they did with most of the brands, most of the channels where users already used to interact. So basically, this is how most of the generalized marketing approaches have been taken. And again, for Facebook, Facebook ended up with amazing DAOs. Almost everyone uses Facebook. So this is because of the kind of product they have. So I think these are the scenarios where a generalized approach has been taken. I would not advise for a generalized approach because for some of the products it may work, but for most of the products, which is 90-95% of the products, it may not work. Most of the products have a general, don't appeal to the masses. They are slightly niche or they would cater to a certain set of audience. And that is what you should always target. You should always look at the kind of personas you want to target, the kind of users who are actually interacting with your application, and that is the insight which needs to be taken when you start acquiring users, right? And
So
when you look at generalized campaigns, I think CAC becomes
I'm just going to summarize what you have said till now for the general approach so that it just puts everything into perspective. Is what you're saying is कि if I'm a shopper stop and I want to get everyone who's coming to my offline shop to scan, I have done actually. I think I went shopping. I mean, I think it was 1.5 years ago that I went shopping. It's just sort of sad. But when I went over there, they'd given me the card, but now that card has become digital. So it just made sense for them to just acquire me and see what I buy, and how I react, and if they can use an application to retain me. That is what you say,
yeah,
we mass and spray. क्या बोला था आपने?
spray and pray.
हाँ, spray and pray. So that is what they might be trying over there. Like सब लोग
Yeah,
को reach out किए and just seeing what sort of people come back and what sort of spends do they do to create a more user persona for everyone to be aware of as to what is happening.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is one. The second thing, if you look at it, is after demonetization, Paytm did a blitz of marketing, or just for that brand recall,
yeah,
where they wanted user adoption and something, and they did end up getting a lot of it. And I think going forward, you might see that in the UPI battlefield, when we have Google Pay, we have WhatsApp Pay saying that they are going to come out with general insurance next year. So they might try those approaches, and
yeah,
that might work because it's a more massive product. Correct.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
But I think
correct.
now what is happening is, I think where the excitement is in the tier 2, tier 3 cities is in the hyper local approach. So I need to acquire people who are there in that geography, or in that interest. Is that where you're taking us with the intent based approach now?
Yeah, so intent-based approach can be anything, right? It can be based on app consumption. It can be based on the interest of the user. It can be based on the geography which you want to target. For example, recently we worked with Tata, right? With Tata Global Beverages Limited, and they released a line of tea and coffee brands, and they wanted to and every product was catered to a specific geography. In India also, India is so diverse culturally as well as in terms of consumption patterns that every region in India also has a different consumption pattern. So in Kerala there is a different kind of tea which is consumed. In Rajasthan it's a different kind of tea. So they wanted to they released different products for different geographies, and that is when location based targeting comes into play. More of regional understanding of the user comes into play. So I think yeah, intent based targeting can be anything. It can be based on a lot of different parameters of the user, be it interest, be it geography, demography, device, etc.
Okay. Naveen, do you want to take this same question on what is the difference between generalized and intent based approach?
Sure, I can. So, see, I think Ronak did speak a lot about it, right? Like, I think the generalized approach works in two situations. One is you don't know who your audience is at all, and you want your product to be tested by a few people and understand which set of audience the product is actually resonating with. So
Correct.
that is you are seeding the you're seeding your app or your product with a large enough base and understand where the highest affinity is. Second is where you think you're building a product. I think WhatsApp, Facebook are great examples. Even TikTok or like your Moj and all of your everyone in that category, Moj, Joe, Shokoso, all in India today can fall under the same category, or YouTube for that matter. Anyone who produces content for the billion users in India are all people where they believe that it is ubiquitous enough to appeal to everyone, and once a user comes and logs in, they will be able to find value in the product, right? So that is where the generalized approach mostly tends to work. I think intent is highest when intent starts working when your product hits particular scale, You have audience cohorts, you know exactly what kind of intent is driving engagement on your app, and you know what kind of users are dropping off and at what particular funnel you lost their interest, and hence you go back and cash in on their intent to get them hooked onto your app, right? Or you know that there is likely intent because they've been lurking around your competition's products, and hence you go back and try and reach out to them saying that, hey, I am better, why don't you come and use me, right? So I think these are the way, yeah, intent typically starts kicking in when you have a large density of data and you have certain scale, which is critical enough for us to start like making a difference. Without data at the end, like you need a certain scale of data to start doing intent based marketing, right? You can understand, or you're speculating to say that I built a product which is likely to be very particular to these kind of audiences, and hence I'm going to go only after that. That is also one approach to go after, but typically you see things like retargeting, extra kicking in basis intent once scale comes into play. So I think these are the two things to keep in mind typically, and it will differ basis the app, the category, the evolution, the nature of things they've done in the past, and that's how each growth marketer needs to look at this.
Okay. So I think that was pretty sweet and short and sweet. So I don't think there is a require for a summarization over there, but let me do it anyway. So basically, if you are a early stage startup working with a InMobi or a Indus to get intent based might not be the right decision for you because you still need to create your user personas, you need to define your cohorts, and like Naveen said, you need to understand the user journey. And in the yesteryear, this used to be called the cart abandonment. This thing, I think that's how Bezos started with his entire one-click thing, right? Where is the card being abandoned, and why can't we engage people over there? So you need to be able to understand your users, understand what drives them, and once you're able to create those user personas, that I have a early tech adopter, I have this, I have that, then you can gun after each and every segment, or as it is called, bucketing. I don't see a bucket over here, and I have no idea why is it called that, because I don't want to bucket anyone, but that's what people call it. You start bucketing your users, and once you bucket your users, you define their user journey. I think that brings me to the next point, which is the most important point, is key defining success. So how? I mean, let me just say one more thing over here is many of you must be wondering, because I was wondering how much money should I be spending acquiring users. If you have kept in mind your metrics is that Naveen mentioned earlier, how much is your user acquisition cost and how much is your lifetime value from that user. If you know these two things, then you can determine per user cost, and per user cost will also mean that per channel cost. This is basically quant based marketing that you can look into. Like, I think Neil Patel or one of those guys has this Excel sheet for Mint that you can refer to as to each and every medium and what is the each and every cost that you're looking at. And the reason I'm talking about this is because we need to define what is success. And before we define what is success, we need to know what is the sort of spend and the platforms that we need to go look at. So if you're an early stage startup and have like a budget of, let's say, a lakh to 5 lakhs, or below 5 lakhs, or three to 5 lakhs, I think you're still good to go with your own understanding, going with the generalized approach, finding your audience, finding your rhythm, and then when you are feeling confident with your spends is when you approach somebody like a Naveen and Ronak for further guidance as to how do I specialize in this cohorts. And what these guys will end up doing for you is telling you how to define your success. And I'm not going to like give any more this thing. So guys, how do you, when you are starting with this program and you are going towards intent based, हो गया जनरल में मैंने कर लिया, मेरा bucketing हो गया है. I'm sorry, there are a few this thing, non-Hindi speakers. So you're done with your bucketing. You're done with your fine tuning your product. Your GTM strategy is ready, and now you are going like how do I define success? What is success? What does success look like?
So I'll take a shot at this first, Roman. So I think the success of paid marketing always is what is the flywheel, the virality, or the feedback loop that's kicking in when you do paid marketing, right? If paid marketing as a channel through specific CAC and installs is giving you 10 installs, are these 10 users actually talking about your app? Is there word of mouth kicking in? Are they bringing their social circles into it, right? The simple metric to look at this is if paid installs is giving you 10 installs overall, how much has your user base grown by? If you spent acquiring 10 users, has it given you 50 total extra users? Has it given you 20? Or has it remained at 10? Right? I think that is the biggest success of paid marketing, to say that paid marketing is always fueling growth on a continuous basis. At the end of it, your product has to stand for it, to say that a user does come in and experience it and he feels happy about it, and hence he tells 3 or 4 people about it, right? Of course, like, this is all fundamentally on the back of the fact that, like, your CAC and LTV metric backs out and you're paying only whatever you are likely to pay, and you're not in the phase of hyper growth where you're just burning money looking for users.
True.
If you have to be sustainable, then you're building it in such a way that your LTV is always greater than CAC, leaving in whatever money you want to make, depending on whether you're a Series A startup, Series B startup, profitable, whatever are your goals, right? Leaving that room in, and then looking into what kind of flywheel is your paid marketing campaign setting up for. Is it giving you good retention? Is it giving you good virality and word of mouth spreading, in terms of, essentially, at the end of the day, your app has to keep climbing in the Play Store. Like, whether it's a Google Play Store or Indus App Bazaar, it depends upon the user love for the app. And the user love comes in, your paid marketing is just adding fuel to the fire. And that should be a cycle which you, like, set off with paid marketing. That is how I would define success of any growth marketer or any paid marketing campaign.
Yeah, Ronak?
Sure, Aditya. So I think, see, success in digital marketing can mean different things for different organizations, right? So it's very critical, basically, to build a goal when you start with a marketing campaign, and you take a consensus with all stakeholders, right? For example, there are marketers which will start with a goal in mind, and their goal can be just for research or sampling or understanding users' views about their particular product or service. And the other marketer would have a goal of acquisition, or reaching a scale of 5 million users, or reaching a scale of 5 million retained users, right? So, or it can be an activation or any other download funnel. So I think the foremost important thing to define success is to first define what is your goal. And once you understand what is the goal, I think that is when you will be able to understand the success of a marketing campaign, right? So I think the goals can be classified into 3 to 4 different categories. One is a goal of maybe acquiring new users, acquiring targeted users. Another can be to improve user engagement or loyalty of the users, or time spent of the users on the product, or stickiness of the product. And third can be to enable transactions, right? So I think, and there can be further different metrics based on different organizations. It can, for a product like TikTok, it can be number of video views per session. Right? So every product will have a different metric, and I think every marketing campaign should be always thought of from a angle of the goals which the marketer is driving. If the goals are not clear, then success cannot be quantified or measured. So I think that's what success looks like. If you are able to define a goal and you are able to achieve that goal at the end of that, through that campaign or through that acquisition, I think that is what success looks like.
Okay, I think that basically does cover a lot of ground and brings me to the next question. But if I were to summarize again, business goals, marketing goals, success. It should be like a triangle that is talking to each other. Can I simplify it like that?
Yeah, yeah,
But let's suppose कि business goals में, Ronak gave the example of TikTok, and I'm a short video application, and I end up seeing that people are spending XXX minutes on my application. I love that metric. Okay,
yes.
and I keep tracking that, saying कि, this is my success. This is how I define success. But a person just doing this continuously, is that, I mean, can that be a good metric, or is that something like, am I interacting, am I like clicking on like, am I leaving a review, am I leaving a comment? I like the metric, everyone is just doing this, but by doing this he might just swipe me out of his phone, and I might be surprised as to why did that happen. And the reason for that is many a times we, as a even as a CIO or CEO or the chief operating business officer, sometimes we end up liking something so much that it becomes a vanity. And that's my next question. How do you know if you're not necessarily like tracking the vanity metric, or you're tracking the real thing? How do I know until and unless like what? How do I know if I'm making that mistake of classic mistake of depending upon one vanity metric that I end up liking, and that looks to me good to me in inverses as well, but does that really make sense? How do I identify this, and how should one avoid this pitfall? Again, question is open to both of
Yeah. So Aditya, I think it comes back to the same thing, right? Which I mentioned previously.
you.
I think it's more important to define what are the goals, and the goals will also depend on the stage of the company. It depends on the product stage of the product. It depends on the kind of features which are available on the product, right? And the stage of the company basis for the stage of the company, the goals also can vary. A product which is currently trying to monetize will have a revenue goal. A product which is trying to build engagement will have a goal of more video views or time spent, or etc. Right. So it's very important to define a goal. Now, when you define a clear goal, I think then it becomes easier for you to break down that goal into various metrics which you should track. And always when you define your metrics, there's always a North Star metric, which is like the success metric of your product or a campaign. And then there are different vanity metrics which add up to that North Star metric, right? So for example, I will just give you an example, right? So when you run a campaign, a lot of marketers tend to look at numbers like impressions, number of impressions I'm generating on a daily basis, number of clicks I'm generating, what are the CTRs, what are the CRs, right? So I think these are the vanity metrics which define a certain component of your marketing campaign. So basically, it defines how the users are interacting with your brand campaign, whether the creative ad copy is good enough. Do you need to make some changes in the creative ad copy? Maybe the communication has to change. So it defines it gives you certain learning, but it will not define the success of the campaign. It will not define whether you are reaching the goals or not, right? So as we earlier also mentioned, the important metrics to track would be a CAC or a LTV, and also the ratio of a CAC versus LTV should be greater than one. I think that's the end goal of every brand, where basically you achieve profitability, right? Otherwise, it's not a business; it's a charity, right? So I think those are the two North Star metric I would look at, and between that, all the different metrics are just vanity metrics, which are just good for learning, but it cannot be used to derive whether a particular campaign is successful or not.
All right. I think that's good as this thing. Uh, I do have like any CEO who says he's happy with 1:1 with LTV and user acquisition cost. Please, I'm
No.
sending my resume. बता दो कौन है ऐसे लोग.
No CEO will accept that.
David, what do you think? What are vanity metrics? How do you avoid that pitfall?
I mean, I think the simplest vanity metric that I see gets tracked a lot is just purely volume of app installs, right? I mean, there is no point in priding yourself on the fact that you hit like the 5 million app installs number, 10 million, 50 million, 100. Doesn't matter. You got 100 million downloads, not more than 1 million people are using your app. It really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how much you spend getting those users if you're not able to make the product sticky, if you're not able to get them engaged, right? I mean, there are like you have to define metrics which indicate both your retention and the quality of users that you're having, right? It's not just about retaining the users, it's also about by either browsing videos or by spending time on your app, are they actually giving quality feedback and consuming your product? I think these are the two aspects to which you should always link back about your besides the economical aspects itself of running campaigns, right? Looking at the overall business, I think these are the two things which you should always keep in mind while looking at metrics for health of the business overall and not just like marketing.
All right, I think that's more or less what I wanted to talk about vanity metric. And if you guys want to discuss further with us, I think we have posted our Discord channel link over here. And I'll also like to, I'm told that I'm not plugged in the sponsor, so I have to do that now. Or it's not really the sponsor, but thank you, Airmeet, for providing this excellent platform, because having those questions over here and being able to stream simultaneously has been a very big help in getting up and running with these webinars and making them engaging. I think tools like this are really exciting to see to come out of India. And I think this is where we enter the last part of our this thing, the conversation, and we have a question from YouTube, and I'm going to like थोड़ा थोड़ा मैं चेंज करने वाला. I'm going to change the way the question is written, but I think Saurabh Chatterjee from YouTube wants to know how the Chinese app ban, those have been coming in staggering this thing, intermittent manner, let's say. How has that affected the Indian app market? I mean, so we basically are talking about how many Chinese applications were out there, which were the categories that were doing well, and now they are no more in that this thing. And I don't know if I want to call TikTok and Cam Scanner and PUBG vintage, because vintage for me is Lambda and Llama, which is like Winamp and Valve. So that is something that is vintage, and even that is not vintage because that's still 15 years in the past. So I'm not sure if I want to call them vintage, but basically his question is ki, which were the categories in which the Chinese apps were leading, and have the substitutes that have come in for the Indian from the Indian diaspora been able to plug that vacuum, or were they able to um, fill the vacuum again? Just saying the same thing twice. So, Naveen,
So,
Ronak,
I mean, yeah, I
I think we are having connectivity issue. Naveen, do you want to try with your video off so that we save a little bit of bandwidth?
I don't think it's easy a lot of into these from an engagement lying about this to say that like all products have caught up in the last 6
Yeah, I think. Can you try again? Let's try.
no.
1, 2, 3. Can you say something? Yes, you're much better.
Can you folks
Yes.
hear me now?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'll switch off video for now. Yeah. So what I was saying is, I don't think it's all of these have like sort of hit off as easily because none of these overnight successes, right? None of the apps that were banned were built with a lot of intense technology effort, user understanding, user research, and all of it. So while we've had apps come up, some categories have shown more success than others. Short form video has seen like a bunch of apps that have come in, all of whom are doing well. They are on the right path because there is a huge economy that, like someone like TikTok created. There is a content led economy that needs to be done for the influencers, for the tools for them, and then there is an algorithm which drives user feedback to make sure that the right recommendations are going. All of these cannot be replicated in a span of 6 months.
Correct.
So I think it takes time. Indian apps are in the fray, and we've already gotten there.
Okay. I think. Okay. So basically, there is some disturbance in Navin's connection, so I'm going to summarize again. Sort of, I don't know if you're there on YouTube even now, but basically, when you talk about app like TikTok, Cam Scanner, PUBG, or anything, you're basically talking not just about them, but you're an entire ecosystem. For example, um, can you replicate not just the technology but also the business? Are you able to nurture that ecosystem, and are you able to sustain that ecosystem? Is what will define the success of the apps that are now getting the limelight after the ban has been enforced. So it's been whatever number of months that PUBG has been banned, and PUBG aa raha hai, PUBG ja raha hai, PUBG is coming, PUBG is going, but PUBG stays in the realm of people's imagination, is because not a lot of people are introduced to mobile gaming from PUBG. The battle royale scenario. I've seen walking around in parks, people gathering around and playing, and there is a local champion and all of that. And even in TikTok, there is this local TikTok star that people want to engage with. So it's not just the application. For example, when you see a retail shop, it's just not the retail shop. There is an entire supply chain management that is working behind the thing, so that McDonald's can give you a burger in under 10 minutes, or a burger can give you a burger in 10 minutes. So not just that, but also how the business will pan out and how is the GTM strategy is what will define the success or failure of the the ones that have come in. Ronak, what do you agree with what Ronak said, or do you want to add something to the entire scenario that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think I agree with you and Naveen both. I think there's a lot of Chinese applications which were heavily used by users in India, and it's not just entertainment or short videos. There is Share It, which is used to share apps. There is Cam Scanner. There is PUBG, which is into gaming. There is Hago, which was a game aggregator. One of the best products when you look at it from uh, the way product has been created. So I think it has definitely a Chinese ban has created a big hole in the entire ecosystem when it comes to the kind of services and content which is available to consume. I think only one category has picked up, which is short videos in India. There are a lot of apps which have been created. Roposo is one, which is by Mobi, and then there's likes of ShareChat, Valiant, etc. also coming out with their short video app. But I think it's too soon. They are still in the acquisition mode. They're still acquiring users. They work with us on a regular basis, so we understand how the marketers also are still on a regular basis understanding what kind of personas will basically they're catering to, what are the kind of content they need to add or they need to basically create more. And also then there's an entire ecosystem of content creators which were working with you, which were creating content for TikTok or which were creating content for different applications. I think that also that entire ecosystem is now is there, but it's not been able to connect with the new applications which are coming. So I think the entire ecosystem has to adapt, and it will take a lot of time. It is not just 4 to 6 months, which can we can easily replicate what these applications are able to do. But I think it is going to take a lot of time. But I think this also creates a big opportunity for Indian ecosystem, Indian startup ecosystem. There are a lot of startups which have started coming in, creating different applications, trying to create replicas or at least trying to fill up the void which Chinese ban has created. So I think it's bigger. It's a bigger opportunity for Indian ecosystem, and I think in a couple of days, uh, since India is a land of innovation, I think it's only a couple of years where we'll get back to what I think what Chinese apps had created in India.
So basically, you're saying it takes at least half a decade to be an overnight success.
Not half a decade, I think couple of years at least. Because see, I think the consumption was already there. The users are already there. They're just waiting for the next good content application or short video application to come in and consume content. So I think it will take a lesser time, but at least it will take couple of years for them to understand what kind of content works or how to create that content. Get a get a basically get a lot of content creators to work with them. I think that is the most important part, right? You have to create a entire ecosystem around you to create content. You just cannot aggregate content. So I think that will take a lot of time to build that ecosystem.
So UGC will take time, you are saying, especially in.
Yeah, UGC will take. Yes.
Okay, so user participation, like we have discussed, is, when you define success, like Naveen mentioned, if people are sharing your application ahead, I think as a person trained as a journalist, we are taught that when there's a view readership and there is distribution into two or at least three is what defines. Like if you look at the Hindi newspaper distribution, it might be only 10, but in any household there are three people. So that creates a shareability quotient of any application. So that's one of the success metrics that you need to keep in mind.
Yes.
Second is, am I talking about your application to my colleagues or in my peer circle? That is something that will help you, not just acquire users, but since you have shown them the intent with your copy, that this will help you do this and that. So immediately there is that connect, and there is also there is this FOMO. I need to share this with someone, or there is that uniqueness that comes in. I think we are basically up with the time, but since we started 5 minutes late, I'm going to extend it for 5 more minutes and take up the next question. Is I think this is sort of which I find it to be a little absurd. I don't know why this question is there, but is there any effect on Google Play installs if an app is published on Indus App Bazaar? Ronak?
Yeah, I think it's a highly debatable discussion, Aditya, because Google never discloses its algorithm of counting installs, which are shown on Google Play Store. But a lot of experiments have been conducted, uh, at least by Indus, because we have a lot of system applications. We don't use our products are completely basically distributed through OEM channels and not through Google Play Store. So we have done a lot of experimentations, and we have figured out that Google Play displays the count of active devices which have the app installed, right? And this hypothesis has also been well documented on Stack Overflow, Quora, by various engineers. These are pretty popular engineering platforms, discussion platforms. So I think just to give you an example, we have our own in-house developed application called Indus Launcher, for which we have acquired users only through OEM channels, right? By virtue of our OEM partnerships, and we have not spent a single dollar on marketing on Play Store, but Google Play Store shows 10 million plus installs. So I think, yeah. So this points to the fact that it's counting active device installs, right? A lot of early stage advertisers come to us with this query that apart from just acquiring users, they also have a goal of GP install numbers for market validation, for investor validation. And we work with them on a regular basis. We are able to demonstrate to them that uh, uh, installs from other channels, offline channels, or Indus App Bazaar, etc., get counted on Google Play Store. So I think, yeah. So through various experimentation, we are able to prove it, but it's not anywhere documented that they are, or Google Play has not released any specific documentation around it that any offline channel also they publish the number of installs.
Naveen, what do you think? Does working, publishing your application on various stores, let's say for example, Rona gave the view from a Android point of view, but we also have stores like Cydia which are talking to Apple in the United States saying, ki, hey, why not work together? So, is there some? Are you aware of any penalization or negative impact of publishing on multiple stores?
No.
Naveen? Uh,
So, uh, hello.
yeah.
Yeah, I was saying I don't think there is any impact on install numbers or downside effect as such as being on multiple app stores, right? I think the only thing app developers need to keep in mind while being present on multiple app stores is that every version of the app you develop needs to be updated on all the app stores that your app is present. Because a user may be discovering your app on multiple places. If the app version is outdated on one, you're giving a bad experience to them. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're up to date there. That's pretty much the only thing you have to remember. There is no downside of being present in multiple. You just don't know user behavior. So make sure you're present everywhere where a user could be discovering apps. That's all you need
Um,
to keep in mind.
thank you. I think so. It's safe to assume that in China, for example, you have 10 leading stores, and in addition to that, you have other, app stores out there. So I don't think there is any this thing. And I myself use an iPhone and I use a Samsung phone. I have Indus Apple's Galaxy Store in this, and I also have CDI in this. So I don't know. It just gives you more options, and iOS by default doesn't give me a lot of themes and icons and all of that, which I just get from the CDR store. So it just is more fun to use my iPhone, and jailbreaking should not be a penalized thing. But that's just my personal view. How I mean, people from Linux, we are used to having multiple stores, it's just that philosophy when it comes to ecosystems, it just is sort of surprising. But that's for another topic altogether. I think that's more or less the end of this conversation. But if you have any more questions, you can join us in our Discord this thing, or there is some more time remaining. You can drop in your questions now. What I am going to do is start doing now is summarizing the conversation in a manner that should help most of us put everything in perspective. If you feel that your questions need more personalized approach for to be resolved, or you want to know as to how can you start working with InMobi or Indus App Bazaar, and like Nitin asked us, ki, what are the metrics that you consider for success of this conversation on you Airmeet? I think let me just read the question properly. What are your metrics for gauging the success of this Airmeet? The smile on Ronak's face, I think that's. But we have
I
certain.
think I think Aditya, you should answer this.
Yeah. I mean, there are so. Okay, so we can connect on LinkedIn. I think Himani and Eti they are present in these conversations. They can drop Ronak's LinkedIn, Naveen's LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever he prefers to connect with people. I am on Twitter. I am Rob ADK. Yeah, so these are Himani has posted all of the links. I am at Prof ADK on this thing, and on LinkedIn I am Jiv Sagar. So, with that said, I'm just going to start summarizing the entire conversation. And what will happen next is we have recorded this thanks to Airmeet, and we will be cutting the summary video and emailing it across and uploading it on the YouTube channel. So, do subscribe and press the bell icon so that you know when we upload the video out there. I think we have one more question that just came in. Okay. So today we have spoken about what are the right metrics to track. Some of the right metrics to track are user acquisition cost versus your LTV. If you have a very good boss, you can be happy with 1:1. If you do have that boss, do let us know. But if not, the lifetime value at least has to be 3 to 5 times of the user acquisition cost, or as our friends in the telecom sector call it ARPU. Um, so those are the right metrics that we need to look at. Impressions and all is good for brand building and helping in brand recall, but what would matter is the retention. So defining success is where you define what success looks like and what are the metrics that you will follow for raising and for your product successes. So those are two different, as I've understood, those are two different things. What is a vanity metric? Vanity metric is just looking at impressions and going, "Wow, I am the boss." You might not be the boss. Look at the user stickiness, and if it's really helping your user in its LTV journey. And basically, are you able to retain or keep your user engaged through their journey? What are the key milestones for your category? Like Naveen mentioned, if you're a travel application, DAO might not, daily active users or DAO might not matter to you, but monthly active users or per quarter active users might matter to you. For an example, like a Clear Trip or an MMT. But if you are like a daily, food delivery thing, you might want to engage your like Swiggy or a Zomato, or you might want to engage people on a more regular basis, on a daily basis, maybe 2 times in a day or 3 times in a day. And the last one is how working with InMobi and Indus can help you. I think that can be something that can be taken in a personalized manner. You have all of the the connections over here. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. You do want to leave the um, participants who joined us today with a final message on how your respective companies can help them, and a last pitch for them to just connect with you. Naveen, do you want to go
Yeah.
first?
Um, yeah, I mean, thanks for a great session, Aditya, Ronak. I think
You're welcome, and thank you for answering all of the
no
questions.
problem at all. Yeah, I think, for any app marketer in India or otherwise, InMobi is a marketing platform that's going to help you acquire users. We work with inventory sources across third party apps, OEMs, and more recently, even premium social and owned channels like Google, Facebook, Taboola, Outbrain, and all of these are channels where we are helping a certain set of app developers get their right outcomes on. So, if you want to acquire users, engage with them, and understand more about them, InMobi has many tools across our marketing platforms that can help you. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help put you in touch with the right folks. Otherwise, if you just want to bounce ideas on how to do growth marketing, even if you don't want to work with InMobi, I'm always available to just spend some time talking to you. Have no issues with that. I've given you my contact details. Feel free to reach out. Have a great evening and all the best for your growth campaigns.
Thank you so much, Naveen. And let me just tell you that is how I started bugging Naveen. I just found something interesting and I DM'd him on Twitter. Thank you for responding and talking to us today. Ronak?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks a lot, Aditya. Uh, Thanks a lot for the great session. So, with Indus App Bazaar is an alternate app store, and by virtue of a partnership with various OEMs, we are on more than 120 million user devices, which is like 30% of the entire device market share in India. So, I think that's a very massive user base we are on, and I think any advertiser who wants to acquire users with intent, with using data, I think we would be the right channel to do that. By virtue of being deeply integrated on the device, we have access to a lot of understanding about the user, be it time spent, interest, location, etc. And I think that helps us do the final matchmaking of the user with the brand. Right. So I think that is the strength which we bring in, and any advertiser who is looking for the right metrics, the right goals, should connect with me, and we can help you drive those goals.
All right, thank you so much, guys. I think Naveen is at Mad Naveen on Twitter. Uh, Ronak is at underscore Jai Ronak. I am at Prof ADK. And I think the next session, Himani will be sending out you all to the details soon. But we are going to be talking about product and how in this product was built, is built, and is being taken forward. So that is it for this session. I hope to see you for the next session. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel because we will be posting a lot more videos in 2021. I wish you all a happy new year. See you in 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Hey Varun, what's up? You wanna come? Varun is my neighbor. Himani, how do I go backstage now?